1 cup of this kills every weed in your yard, but it never touches your grass. If you've been out there on your knees pulling weeds by hand every single weekend, or spraying some harsh chemical weed killer that leaves you worried about your kids and pets walking across the lawn afterward, I want you to put that bottle down for a minute. Because what I'm about to show you costs about $1, sits in your kitchen cabinet right now, and does exactly what those expensive weed killers promise, without a single one of the downsides. That 1 cup is plain white vinegar, and today I'm going to walk you through exactly how to use it so it kills the weeds you're targeting and leaves the grass around them completely untouched, because that part, the technique, is where almost everyone gets this wrong and ends up with dead patches of lawn right alongside their dead weeds. Let's start with why vinegar actually works on weeds in the first place, because understanding the mechanism is what's going to help you use it correctly instead of just dumping it everywhere and hoping for the best. The vinegar sitting in your kitchen, the plain white kind, is about 5% acetic acid. That acid is what does the actual work. When it touches a plant's leaves, it strips away the waxy protective coating on the surface, and once that coating is gone, the acid pulls moisture straight out of the plant's cells. Within hours, you'll see the leaves start to wilt and brown, and within a day or two, most young, tender weeds are completely dead, dried out from the outside in. Now here's the important part almost every article online leaves out. Vinegar is what's called a non-selective contact herbicide. Non-selective means it doesn't know the difference between a weed and your grass. It kills whatever green leafy tissue it actually touches. Contact means it only affects the parts of the plant it physically lands on. It doesn't get absorbed and carried down into the root system the way some chemical herbicides do. So if you spray it broadly across your whole lawn, you will absolutely kill grass right along with the weeds. And I don't want you finding that out the hard way after this video. This is exactly why the technique matters so much more than the ingredient itself. Vinegar isn't magic that only recognizes weeds. It's a simple acid that kills contact tissue, and your job is making sure the only tissue it contacts belongs to the weed you're targeting. So let's get into exactly how to apply this the right way. The single most important tool for this entire method isn't the vinegar at all. It's how you deliver it. Skip the wide spray bottle entirely, the kind that mists in a broad cloud, because that's the #1 reason people end up with dead patches in their lawn. Instead, use either a small precision spray bottle with an adjustable nozzle set to a narrow stream, or, even better for individual weeds, a basic paintbrush or a foam craft brush dipped directly into the vinegar and applied straight onto the weed's leaves. For scattered individual weeds, cracks in your driveway, dandelions poking up in random spots across the lawn, the paintbrush method genuinely gives you the most control. Dip the brush into straight, undiluted white vinegar and paint it directly onto the leaves of the weed, really coating the surface thoroughly. Because you're physically touching only the leaves you choose to touch, there's zero risk of overspray drifting onto surrounding grass blades the way there would be with any kind of spray application, even a narrow one. If you've got a larger patch of weeds clustered together, maybe along a fence line or in a garden bed border where grass isn't growing right up against them anyway, a narrow stream spray bottle held close to the weeds, 6 inches away or less, works well. The key here is holding it low and close, aiming directly at the base of the weed, where the leaves meet the soil, rather than spraying from standing height, where wind and distance make overspray onto nearby grass almost impossible to avoid. For weeds growing directly in the middle of your lawn, mixed right in with the grass itself, here's the technique that solves the problem most people think is unsolvable. Take an old plastic bottle. A squeeze bottle works great, or even a turkey baster if you've got one sitting in a kitchen drawer, and use it to apply vinegar in a thin, controlled line directly onto the crown of the weed, right where the leaves emerge from the soil, working the tip down between the grass blades rather than over top of them. It takes a little more patience than just spraying, but for a lawn with only a handful of scattered weeds, this precision approach means you can clear every single one without a single yellow patch showing up in your grass afterward. Timing matters just as much as your application method, so let's talk about when to actually do this. Apply vinegar on a dry, sunny day, ideally when there's no rain expected for at least 24 hours afterward. Vinegar works through evaporation and direct absorption into the leaf surface, and rain will just wash it away before it has a chance to actually do its job, meaning you'll need to start the whole process over. Midday, when the sun is strongest, actually speeds up how quickly the vinegar dehydrates the weed, so don't feel like you need to wait for evening the way you would with some other garden treatments. Morning application, after the dew has dried off, is also a solid window, since damp leaves from morning dew will dilute the vinegar right as you apply it. Avoid windy days entirely, no matter which application method you're using. Even a light breeze can carry vinegar mist or splashes further than you'd expect, and that's true even with the precision paintbrush and squeeze bottle methods, since a gust at the wrong moment while you're working can still send droplets onto nearby grass blades you weren't aiming for. Now let's talk about which weeds this actually works best on, because vinegar isn't equally effective against everything growing in your yard, and knowing this up front saves you a lot of frustration. Young weeds, the kind that have just sprouted and only have a few tender leaves, respond dramatically well to vinegar. Their leaf surfaces are thin and haven't developed a thick, waxy coating yet, so the acid penetrates almost immediately, and you'll see visible wilting within just a few hours. Established weeds with deep taproots, dandelions being the classic example everyone deals with, are trickier. The vinegar will absolutely kill the visible leaves you treat, and the plant will look dead within a day or two. But because vinegar doesn't travel down into the root system the way some chemical herbicides do, that same taproot sitting underground often has enough stored energy to send up new growth within a week or two. For these, plan on repeating the treatment every time you see fresh growth emerge, typically 2 to 3 applications spaced about a week apart, and you'll eventually exhaust the root's stored energy reserves to the point where it stops coming back. For weeds with woody or particularly thick, waxy leaves, certain broadleaf weeds, and some tougher perennial weeds, plain vinegar alone sometimes isn't quite enough to fully penetrate the leaf surface. Here's a small addition that dramatically improves how well it works on these tougher cases, without changing anything about the selective application technique we already covered. Add just a small squeeze of dish soap to your vinegar, about a teaspoon per cup, and mix it in before applying. The soap acts as a surfactant. It breaks the surface tension of the vinegar so it actually sticks to and spreads across that waxy leaf coating, instead of just beating up and rolling off the way plain vinegar tends to on tougher leaves. Let's also talk about grass and gravel areas specifically, since these come up constantly with this method. For weeds growing in gravel driveways, between paving stones, or in cracks in concrete where there's no grass anywhere nearby to worry about protecting, you can be much more liberal with your application. Since there's no lawn at risk in these spots, a regular spray bottle set to a wider mist works perfectly fine here. And you don't need to bother with the precision paintbrush technique at all in these specific locations. This is honestly the easiest use case for vinegar, and it's where most people should start if they're trying this method for the first time and want to build confidence with it before tackling weeds actually mixed into their lawn. One more practical tip that saves a lot of hassle. Before you start treating weeds scattered throughout your actual lawn, do a small test patch first. Pick one obvious weed, treat it with your chosen method, and check back the next day. If you see any yellowing on the grass blades immediately surrounding that weed, you know you need to adjust your technique, maybe switching from a spray bottle to the paintbrush method, or being even more careful about how close you're holding the applicator to the ground before you commit to treating your entire yard the same way. It's also worth thinking about what's growing near the weed before you treat it. not just the grass. If you've got flowers, vegetables, or ornamental plants bordering a weed patch, the same non-selective nature that makes vinegar risky for your lawn applies just as much to anything else green and leafy nearby. Before treating weeds in a garden bed, take 30 seconds to gently move aside any nearby desirable plant leaves, or use a piece of cardboard or a plastic lid as a simple shield, holding it up between the weed you're treating and anything you actually want to keep alive. It sounds like overkill for something this simple, but it takes seconds and completely removes any risk of accidentally damaging plants you've spent a whole season growing. Now, I do want to be honest with you about the limitations here, because I'd rather you know this up front than be disappointed later. Vinegar is not a long-term soil treatment, and it won't prevent new weed seeds from sprouting in the same spot weeks or months down the road, the way some chemical pre-emergent herbicides claim to. It's a contact kill on existing growth, which means this is a method you'll be repeating throughout the growing season as new weeds pop up, rather than a one-time application that solves the problem permanently. For most people dealing with a scattered handful of weeds rather than a full-blown infestation, that trade-off, a few minutes of touch-up work every couple of weeks in exchange for never using a harsh chemical on your property, is an easy one to make once you've tried it a season or two. If you've got kids or pets who spend a lot of time on the lawn, this is really where vinegar earns its place over anything you'd buy at the garden center. There's no waiting period before it's safe to let them back on the grass. No warning label telling you to keep everyone off the treated area for 24 or 48 hours. Once the vinegar has dried, which usually takes less than an hour on a sunny day, the area is completely safe because you're using something that's already sitting in salad dressing in your own refrigerator. Let's talk about cost for a second too, because this is where the difference really adds up over a full growing season. A gallon of plain white vinegar runs about $3 to $4 at most grocery stores, and that same gallon, used a cup or two at a time with the precision methods we've covered, easily lasts you the entire spring and summer for a typical yard with a moderate weed problem. Compare that to a bottle of commercial weed killer, which usually runs $15 to $25 and covers a fraction of the area, and you're looking at a fraction of the cost for essentially the same visible result on the weeds you're actually targeting. There's also a storage advantage worth mentioning. Commercial weed killers typically come with disposal instructions, shelf life limits, and specific storage requirements to keep them away from children and pets, since they're genuinely hazardous if ingested or mishandled. Vinegar just sits in your pantry or garage indefinitely with none of those concerns. And if you've got young kids or curious pets in the house, not having a hazardous chemical bottle sitting around at all is honestly worth almost as much as the money you're saving. One question that comes up a lot with this method: does the concentration of vinegar matter? Plain white vinegar from the grocery store is about 5% acetic acid, and that's exactly what we've been using throughout everything I've shown you so far. There are stronger horticultural vinegars sold specifically for weed killing, sometimes 20% or even 30% acetic acid. And while those do work faster and more aggressively on tougher, established weeds, they also require actual safety precautions, gloves and eye protection, since that concentration can genuinely burn skin on contact. For the everyday weeds most people are dealing with around their yard, the plain grocery store vinegar sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now is more than strong enough, and it doesn't require any of that extra caution to use safely around your family. So to recap the actual routine: pick your application method based on where the weed is growing. Paintbrush for scattered individual weeds. Close-range narrow spray for clustered weeds along borders. Squeeze bottle or turkey baster for weeds mixed directly into your lawn. Apply on a dry, calm, sunny day. Avoid wind entirely, and add a touch of dish soap for tougher, waxier weeds. Expect to repeat treatment on deep-rooted weeds like dandelions every week or so until the root finally gives out, and always test on one weed first before treating your whole yard the same way. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Have you tried vinegar on weeds before? And did it work? Or did you end up with some unexpected yellow patches in your grass along the way? What's the most stubborn weed you're dealing with in your yard right now? Is it dandelions? Crabgrass? Something growing in your driveway cracks that just won't quit? Drop your answers down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you're up against this season. And before you go, I want to leave you with one last thought that ties this whole video together. So much of the weed killer marketed to homeowners is built around convenience. Spray the whole yard at once. Don't think about technique. Let the chemicals sort out what lives and what dies. And that convenience does come with a real cost, both financially and in terms of what you're comfortable having your kids and pets walk across a few hours later. Vinegar asks a little more of you up front. A bit of patience with a paintbrush, a bit of care about where you're aiming. But what you get in return is complete control over exactly what lives and what doesn't in your own yard, using something that was already sitting in your kitchen the whole time. This isn't about being against chemical weed killers entirely. If you've got a genuinely massive infestation covering half an acre, this precision method obviously isn't the fastest tool for that particular job. But for the average yard, the dandelions in the lawn, the weeds creeping up through the driveway cracks, the stuff most of us are actually dealing with week to week, $1's worth of vinegar and a few extra minutes of careful application handles it completely, without a single warning label in sight. If this helped, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more simple, natural ways to handle things around your home and yard. And turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.